Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Ramadan Storytime. My name is Ahfad Jaffry and today is, subhanAllah, the 24th of Ramadan. Believe it, but it is now the last few nights of this blessed month. Just before we get started, let me share a small but very valuable hadith with you guys. It is narrated that in the last few nights of this blessed month, the Prophet would roll up his bed and spend his nights in worship. So, my brothers and sisters, make sure that you take full advantage of these last few days of this incredibly blessed month. Now, without wandering too far off, inshallah, let's get straight into the story. So today our story is of a very special boy and a very strong fighter, and his name is David, or Dawood alayhi salam. And our story is about Dawood and Jalut, or David and Goliath. Now this story is found in a couple of chapters in the Quran, namely Surah Baqarah, starting at around verse 246, and then a couple of verses after that. And inshallah, without any more delay, let's get straight into the story. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. A brave boy. The story of David and Goliath. So once upon a time, we're going back into history now, and we're talking about the children of Israel and the land that they lived in, the land of Canaan. Now this land was a beautiful, luscious green land, and the fact that Allah had honored them with such a beautiful land made them very arrogant and prideful, and this resulted in them forgetting to pray to Allah. One day, enemies came and surrounded this land of Canaan and defeated the children of Israel, or Bani Israel. And these enemies, they took their land from them. However, Allah felt pity for them, and so He sent them a prophet. The prophet Samuel alayhi salam. Allah sent this prophet to teach the people to be good. At this time, the children of Israel also had no leader, and so this noble prophet selected and elected this man called Dawood to be their king and to lead them into battle against the enemies. Dawood was a very good and honorable man, and with his charisma and personality, he gathered a huge army and set out for the enemies. On his way to fight the enemy gathered with his army, Dawood reached the banks of a river, and he saw the enemy's army on the other side of the river, and he saw that the enemy's army was even bigger than his own army. And in the ranks of the enemies, there was a giant named Jalut, or Goliath, and he was the leader of the army of the enemies. Dawood turned to his soldiers and said, "We are going to cross this riverbank. Allah will test us there. Don't drink water from this river. Only those who don't drink water from this river will fight alongside me." But the soldiers did not listen to their king, and almost all of them drank water from the river except a few of them, a few faithful soldiers. Exactly 313 soldiers remained in the army of Dawood. Now, Dawood's army was already smaller than the enemy's army, but now it was even more smaller. And so naturally, Dawood's army began to feel a little scared. However, in the ranks of Dawood's army, a brave boy stood up, and he went and fought the giant of the enemies alone. He pulled back his slingshot, and with the firing of one sling, he killed Jalut. He killed Goliath. And this young man's name was David, or Dawood alayhi salam. Allah had sent Dawood to save his people. Dawood grew up to be a very noble and honorable king, as well as the prophet of God. Allah tests people in many different ways, but this is not to make their lives more difficult. This is for people to understand themselves, to see themselves, so that they can grow closer to Allah. When they realize how much they need Allah. As a very famous narration says, one who has recognized himself has recognized his Lord. And that was the story of the brave boy, David versus Goliath. I hope you enjoyed that story. Thank you so much for spending some of your precious time with us, listening to these daily Ramadan stories. Just before we finish up, I'd like to ask you guys something. Let us know down below. What did you learn from this story? And inshallah, may Allah accept your efforts and answer your du'as. And inshallah, we will see you tomorrow. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.